We're live.
Hello.
And we're alive. We're live
live.
and alive.
We're well. Welcome Thursday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
He's still Peter.
I'm here.
And we're here. So we have news. Our guests are kind of spread out a little bit tonight because normally our main guest comes on at 8:30. He's not coming on until 9 tonight, which is fine. So
and our guest candidate is going to be coming on at 8:15.
Oh, not 8:10.
No, 8:15. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure.
I don't know.
I think we got that all figured out.
Well, look, if she pops up at 8:10, we could bring her on.
Hey, it's all good.
I'm the one who sent out the link. So we're spread out. So how do you want to?
I think that there's a number of places we could go, but obviously, guys, the order of the day, of course, is certainly what's going on in Afghanistan. This is a look, tip of the hat to President Biden. There's a lot of things that we lament about what might have been if we had a President Sanders, but this is definitely one of those things that Bernie and Biden probably even had private conversations about. Mm-hmm. War in the Middle East is a complete waste of time, effort, and money. And it's morally wrong.
It's amoral.
But it's not just that it's immoral. It's also something that is benefiting a lot of people. And so,
well, look, at this point, I think it's safe to say that most people realize that this war, it's not even really a war because it wasn't properly declared. But
for those of you who
was for profit.
Well, for those of you who follow our show or are new to the show,
profit and poppies.
One thing you do know is that we are huge advocates for our constitutional rights, especially our free speech rights, and that, of course, leads to Julian Assange. And Julian Assange, back in 2011, had put out a statement effectively saying that the war in Afghanistan is basically just a way to launder money.
I agree, Declan. I agree. But regardless of who's actually doing it, if he's the puppet sitting there while they're doing it, this is something that, and you know what? I told you what Bo had said about this. Like, you can look at 4 administrations and say who's to blame and where were the choices made. And yet he holds Obama most responsible because he views him as the person that was the smartest.
That is very true.
And really could have done better. But they're all just beholden to the same complex.
We've obviously we complimented President Obama for his efforts in Cuba. Yeah. But when it comes to the Middle East, he was a disaster. He was as bad as any president. And so where we are right now is what we hope will ultimately happen, is that this sets the precedent. You get out of Afghanistan, then you get out of Syria, you get out of Somalia, you get out of Yemen, all of it.
But they don't even count it when it's drone bombing because it's unmanned. So then no one really pays attention to that because it's not a troops going over their situation.
Carlos, great to hear. We will definitely be there. And we're gonna have a very substantive conversation about Medicare for all this evening,
and
where we actually think it's going to be working.
For people that want to really do something on the 15th, we really do like the idea of promoting the PRO Act. It's really something that's a pretty safe push. Like, for people, it's not that controversial, and it's something that a lot of people can get behind, and yet it would be really beneficial for labor, especially here.
Dieter McBusiness, which is a great name, really, really like that. It's close to my name, but it's just really it's close to my name, and it's Irish, so and it talks about business, so it's all good. Why isn't W being talked about it? Well, that's a very good point, because our bootlicker of the week couldn't be anybody other than the vice president at the time that we ended up in Afghanistan's daughter, Liz Cheney.
And this doesn't even account for all of her interests with Halliburton and whatever. This is just tip of the iceberg, military-industrial complex bootlicking here.
So, of course, they had her. So how would you describe the TV show The View? What would be the way that you would describe that type of a show?
I would look at someone and tell them that I'd rather have a root canal than watch it. How about that?
You're just being violent, Jen.
I'm being violent.
Very violent.
I would say it's a bunch of old biddies and people just sitting around talking ridiculous nonsense.
I would definitely say that
corporate funded.
Well, when you consider the time that show goes on TV, which I think is at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Look, I definitely am a daytime. I have dabbled in daytime television. I love my story.
Yes.
But that show is. To me, it's symbolic of some of the worst aspects of this country.
The reason why The View is such a bad show in so many ways is because they really are a mouthpiece for the corporate establishment in so many ways. And they're really adhering to a very specific audience of people that they want to have that self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, if we hammer it home hard enough, they're going to buy it. And so, of course, The View decided to have on, I don't even call her Liz Cheney. That is Dick Cheney's daughter, and that's what she should be referred to as. Just like any of these.
Call her Lil Dick.
Well, just like any of these kids, if you will, the nepotism runs very, very deep. But of course, Liz decides to go on and talk about what a travesty it is that we left Afghanistan. And why would that be a travesty? Why would she say that, oh, the violence against women and this is that? No, there was never going to be a good time to get out.
That's what I want to ask people. Well, when would it be good? What's your plan? What's your goal? What's your end? They have none.
No.
So then what you're saying is we should perpetually just be there. And that just, I don't understand that. Now, I do think that there was a way to have done this better. I do.
Now, apparently, and I haven't watched the video yet, but Kim Iverson, friend of the show, awesome lady, she made a video alluding to the fact that the reason why the withdrawal has been so disastrous is that it had to do with, instead of making sure that the troops went in first before declaring the withdrawal to get people out safely, is that would be an admission of defeat to the Taliban.
Right.
So that's bad optics, bad politics, everything all around.
Okay, so he was willing to do it, but not to really do it in the way as, where you'd really have to have egg on your face.
And one thing that people are pointing out, there's two things to keep in mind here. Is that Biden is now starting to get some heat. And why is that? Because he's crossing the wrong people.
You know what, though? And good for him. But apparently, and we'll get into it when we talk about, when we get into news and abuse, there was a recollection of him being in a meeting in 2009 or something that happened in 2009 where he was really not wanting things. He has not been for this for a very long time. I believe that that's what we're going to be talking about.
It really makes you wonder how he was so adamant about going into Iraq, but was so dead set against Afghanistan.
Yeah, because really they're both train wrecks.
Of course.
But I have spent the past couple of days doing a lot of research on Afghanistan. I've watched videos on the history of Afghanistan. I am getting extremely well versed in Afghanistan.
And of course, Dick Cheney's daughter has a lot of money. I'm not talking a few bucks. We're talking millions of dollars invested in Halliburton.
Yeah, these wars have been very, very good.
Very good to the Cheney family. Hey, they basically own Wyoming. I mean, that's probably one of the states that most people wouldn't necessarily think about.
And note, the only state in the entire country
that did not donate
to the campaign.
Well, the Cheneys are going to make sure that no one gets to jet.
And now they probably never will.
One of the most beautiful states in the country, I would say.
No, it is. It is actually. That's true.
But at the same time, we have to recognize that there are these individuals who are as responsible for our predicament as anybody.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we bring up Liz Cheney, because there were a lot of neoliberals and neocons.
Both parties.
Even Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, yeah.
Ted Cruz, all over the media talking about how could Biden do this? It's such a bad thing. Let me get my check from General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin while I'm waiting. But at the same time, Liz Cheney in particular deserves the ire because of the fact that her father is as responsible as anybody for getting us into this in the first place.
I think that ultimately this goes back to his brainchild, almost like him and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz and all the
when they took over in the 70s or whatever it was.
It was the first time around.
It's very, very difficult to look at these circumstances. And it isn't just a little bit of money, guys. This is world-changing money, world-changing influence, hundreds of millions of dollars, and all for the sake of war and killing people.
Yeah.
And taking over other parts of the world. And what is the main purpose for doing it? Again, it's all about laundering money. And on top of that, there's rich natural resources. Apparently,
we want poppies.
Well, you should have seen this article. We didn't even put this up, guys, but there was an article written in the New York Times. I don't remember the journalist, use that term loosely with the New York Times, that wrote this article, if anybody can look it up. But they talked about the fact that there is at least $1 trillion of mineral wealth in Afghanistan. What are we to do about that? How could we leave all that mineral wealth behind? When you start talking like that, you're really losing control of the argument. You're admitting that this isn't actually about nation building or saving people's lives.
Never is.
This is about money and power.
Always.
And that's all it is. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
So ultimately,
It's because she's so worried about women's rights, but she probably has no problem with us being cozied up with Saudi Arabia. It's just it's very telling. It's very telling.
But I do think that there is a consensus in this country right now where people really are starting to wake up to this. And that's why you got to give, yes, I know. Well, I'm a terrible person. What can I say? I am a terrible, really terrible person. I'm a terrible person, really terrible person. But whether or not this had to do with the fact that, Biden was having communication with Bernie or whoever he was talking to, the fact that he did decide to get us out of the Middle East, essentially, because we look at it as a domino effect.
Can I be clear, though? I'm not happy about what happened.
Not at all.
It's not okay with me that we left people behind, and it's not okay.
And it was deliberate. This is the thing. It's like, how could they have planned it so badly?
Well,
because it was done on purpose.
Yeah. And that's the problem. And also, my understanding is he's bragging about that he was able to bring in 2,000 people, but my understanding is that we really need to find place for about 80,000 people. So if that's the ratio, that's not so good.
And is it really that surprising that the two loudest voices in Congress at the time that we went into Afghanistan, Barbara Lee and Bernie Sanders, are the only two on Capitol Hill saying we need to take in refugees? That's not surprising.
And they're the only ones who are against this whole fiasco from the beginning.
Yeah. Caught a lot of heat for it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes, and we're going to do a panel in November for Veterans Day.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is talked about is how the soldiers who knew that this war was BS from the very beginning, the way that they were just ostracized and considered, non-American. I can remember, sports reference, as a basketball fan, when we were planning to invade Iraq and Steve Nash, who was in the NBA, he was showing up at games with the Canadian flag because Canada is dead set against the war, and they were booing the hell out of him.
Yeah, you're not allowed to be anti-war here.
Not in the United States.
Right. And Jordan just had a good, what's his name? I forget, the gentleman that was on the veteran. It was on
Rory Canning.
Rory was his first name.
Yes. And so he is going to come on our podcast very soon, possibly for that Veterans Day
we
panel.
Want to do that, but you know what? We can talk about that after Labor Day. We have to first
get
through Labor
Day. We got to plan a Labor Day panel, which is very important. But again, the precedent is being set for a real anti-war movement. The next step is to continue getting out and to reduce our unbelievably high military budget. But I'm sure some of those ideas will be wonderful to talk about with a lovely young lady who is running for the U.S. Congress in California's 29th district.
We've got 29.
29. Yes, it is absolutely 29. Okay. I do my research.
I always get, you know what?
There's a lot of districts in California.
Well, and as soon as there's a state that has,
53
we're 27, and so anything more than 27, I can't.
Well, we're third biggest. We'll have 28 congressional districts very soon. Be interesting to see what those maps look like. But nevertheless, California has a lot of amazing progressive candidates, and one who is truly amazing.
Where is 29?
29 is Southern California. It is, I believe, part of the LA metropolitan area.
Like San Bernardino.
Well, we're going to learn from the wonderful Angelica Dunes. I believe I said it right. We'll find out.
Duenas.
Angelica, welcome to Generational Change. Who actually said your name correctly? And if you can unmute yourself.
There we go. Hi there. Jen said it right. Angelica Duenas.
Because of course.
And I would like to apologize to you that on our graphic, it didn't have the Enye. But for the life of me, I'm older and a little tech challenged. I sat there for a while trying to figure out, and I was going to I didn't know what to do. And so it doesn't have it, but I do understand.
It's hard. I end up having to Google. Okay, this is how I do it. I Google my last name, then I copy paste the Enye onto stuff.
That's really smart.
Unless I'm on my phone, because my phone is smart enough to do the Enye thing, but like not on the computer. If I'm on the computer, that's how I do it.
Cut and paste. That's really smart. Okay, cool. Because I was really struggling with that. I'm like, oh no, I feel bad, but no, I know what it was. It's Dueña.
Yeah.
So talk about your district, where it is.
Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. What your demographic is. The background.
Absolutely. So yeah, so like we were talking, my name is Angelica Dueñas. I'm running for Congress in California's 29th Congressional District, which is in Los Angeles. So you guys were all right on that one. And it's in the San Fernando Valley. So San Bernardino it's not too far from here. So there's a lot of
So wait, are you
San Gabriel, San
No,
San Bernardino,
no.
San Fernando. So there's lots of saints around here. But being that, it was a Catholic community, and that's how all the names came about. But that's a whole other thing. I'm running for Congress here. This is not our first time, actually. In 2020, we were able to get 43% of the vote, even though we were outraised 17 times. So with less than $80,000 of grassroots, 100% people-powered campaign. Okay, is what we did. And we accepted no corporate money, none of that, no big oil money, no big pharma money. A clean campaign, how, we've been talking about it. So we were like, we want to, walk the walk, right? Against $1.4 million from big pharma, big oil, foreign interests. I mean, the list goes on. And this is an entrenched incumbent, Tony Cardenas, who has been in Congress now going on 10 years. Before that, he was in city council for 10 years. Before that, assembly for 8 years. He's currently already taking his retirement, his pension from the city of Los Angeles. So this is a guy that's been around for a very long time, who's been in power at every level of government and has had an opportunity to really make something out of his career and his legacy. And all we've been seeing is that, he's okay, his friends and family are okay, but our community is getting worse. So here we are giving it, another try to close that gap, 7 points. And I should say that we were able to get 43% of the vote, not with just clean money, but we had no paid staff, no strategists. We didn't even have Excel. Okay, so we were using like Google Sheets and county data. So I joke, it's like it's Etch-a-Sketch, a sack of potatoes, and like county data and Google Sheets is how we did it. And actually, an amazing group of volunteers.
I think we were only one step past that.
Yeah, no, the one thing that, and listen, there were some amazing volunteers, and obviously we were hit very hard by the pandemic. But the one thing that LA in particular has, you guys really have an amazing activist community, especially if a great candidate, comes along and is willing to put up the fight against, the most corporate of candidates. And obviously Southern California's got plenty of them. It really says a lot about the type of grassroots efforts. The one thing I do lament over the course of Bernie's 2 runs for the presidency is I didn't get a chance to get out there and see Bernie's coffee shop. I really would have loved to have been able to check out that place. And it seemed like a really great meeting ground for a lot of great activists. And I would assume that the activist community is still very strong. But what do you see as ultimately being the difference this time around, and what you feel is going to be the difference to be able to get you over the finish line?
Well, one of the biggest differences is that I was working up until, so last time the primary was in the month of March, I was working up until January. So here we are over a year away, and for one thing or, because of one thing or another, I haven't been working. So, we've been utilizing our time to organize and to strategize. And here we are more than about a year ahead. And we have already raised more money than we did last time around. So for the primary, I was able to make it to the general with about $10,000.
Wow.
We've already outraised that. And so we're hoping to be able to keep on raising money and to be able to build the infrastructure needed to win. I mean, honestly, the only reason why we didn't win last time around is because not enough people knew we were running. The bottom line. And so, as soon as we talked to people and people heard our message, they were on board immediately. So that's the only thing that's really keeping us from winning this time around, is just getting enough funds to be able to get enough mailers, ads, and knock on doors. Last time around, we didn't knock on any doors, you guys. No door knocks. So the results that we got was without canvassing. We did do door hangers, but that's as close as we got. So that's a big difference, is that this time around we're expecting to be able to canvass.
You need to be
it's almost like the gap is the 7 point gap, and we have so much runway because of the lack of infrastructure that we had. So this time around, speaking with strategists and professionals, they're on their ass. Like, they can't understand how it is that we were able to get the results that we got, looking at our finances and our infrastructure or lack thereof that we were able to run this last time around. So it's almost like guaranteed. Obviously, we're ready to work, but I mean, we have a small gap and lots of runway to go ahead and close it.
That's awesome. What were you doing in your previous life? What were you before you got sucked into this?
Yeah, well, I'm a mother. I have 5 kids, so it's been a lot of taking care of children.
Oh, good God. On
That's a lot of work.
On purpose, all yours?
All mine. Yep, all of them. It's single births too.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
so we've been married for going on 16 years now, and we have our 5 kids, and so it's been a lot of that. I've been going to school, have a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's in organizational leadership, and professionally, I do work in human resources. I'm a human resources professional. And amongst other things, I was president of my neighborhood council. I did a couple of terms there, vice president, second VP. I was a Bernie delegate, both in 2016 and 2020. So, we're trying our best to be involved in the community, and since we have 5 children, we really do have a perspective. We start looking into the future, and we really became tired of saying, somebody needs to do something about that. And after a while, when you keep on saying, somebody needs to do this, and then they should do it like this, and they should do it like that, after a while, you got to look at yourself and say, like, I am somebody, and being an example to both my children and our community, and I guess in a greater way, like the movement, to really show that we can make big strides without having to compromise our morals. And here we are, a perfect example. And honestly, the more we talk to people, the more proud I get about the work that we were able to accomplish this last time around, because these numbers are just like unbelievable. And if you take a look at, people with millions of dollars, and Bernie Sanders and AOC and our revolution and all of the endorsements couldn't even break 40%. So, well, we have something very special going on here in the 29th Congressional District, California.
We're speaking with Angelica Dueñas. Okay, I'll get it right this time. I will.
You do the same thing with Richard Quincoces. You can't get that one
Richard
either.
Quincoces.
You get it wrong every time.
And I'm the one practicing on Duolingo,
so
I'm doing the best I can, Angelica, but I'll keep you. Dueñas. Yes, I know. It's the Enya. It's that. I know. It's that like.
Yeah.
What are some?
I say Duenyas, Dueñas. Like Dueñas. That's like phonetically.
To get people to say correctly.
Yeah.
All right, even silly people like me.
Gringos like you.
Well, me white guy, but trying.
I am too. I grew up in South Florida and spent 6 years living in San Antonio, so I've been.
You pick it up. Yes.
Yeah, and certainly enough to know when I look at something in writing what it should sound like. Yeah, certainly.
What are some of the organizations that are supporting you, perhaps backing you this time that didn't last time? Because obviously having that infrastructure is going to be key.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that when Jen ran, there's no question that, we had brand new Congress, and we also had Humanity Forward with the Yang Gang, and they definitely made a tremendous impact in terms of phone banking, text banking, and of course, anybody who was in South Florida who was willing to go, despite being the pandemic, as safely as possible, knock on doors. So there's no question that makes a big difference. And, if there are organizations that are lending a hand or ways that people can get involved, also it's angelicaforcongress.com.
Yes, Angelica, 4 Congress.com. Well, it's a little bit early. Like around here, things move really slow. It's kind of crazy how slow things move. And some people are like, oh, they're waiting until the cutoff, which, a new candidate technically can jump into the race between now and, I want to say mid-January, but I could be wrong. But, there's still a while. So there's some organizations that are not, they don't want to make an endorsement yet until all candidates jump into the race and have time. We have one big endorsement, though, that already came our way that we did not last time around was Brand New Congress. And so that's one that we're super, super proud of. And we're very happy that they're going out so early, because last time around, they were one of those that waited, they would wait until closer to the elections before they would start endorsing candidates. And, they're like an ongoing endorsement, so I'm sure there'll be more coming. But that's one of the endorsements that we have already received. Feel the Burn San Fernando Valley, which is a local club, and a couple of other local clubs. We're hoping to be able to get Sunrise Movement Los Angeles. I know that they're in the process of finalizing their annual review process for candidates. And this other local organization that has gained a lot of popularity and members is Ground Game Los Angeles, which is it sounds like a bunch of people who are usually ready to do canvas work. And so we're hoping to be able to get their endorsement as well, and hopefully earlier rather than later, because a lot of organizations are starting to see the importance of taking these bold steps early on, especially with candidates that they feel that they can trust. And so I feel that our campaign was able to, through how we raise our funds and the work that we put out, to show our fellow activists that we're the real deal, and that we're here to win, and that it's important to get behind our race. So last time around, there was a lot of candidates running, like Bernie on down, like everybody was running. So it was tough. We actually, I feel we got left behind a little bit. Like people didn't see us coming at all, both in the establishment side of things, and also amongst progressives. I think that our race was looking like an uphill battle that was almost impossible. And we were able to show that that was not the case. So we're hoping that we were able to earn the respect of our fellow activists and really start getting that support early on. And that's what we're working on here, building the infrastructure, trying to raise those funds and figuring out what we need to do to win.
I thought I saw you slated to be Catch Fire. Did you seek a Catch Fire endorsement? Do you know what
yes. That was like a while back. So even they're taking early steps to endorse candidates.
I endorsed you. I'm on that board.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
That's what I'm saying, but I
it.
wasn't sure it went through. I wasn't sure it went through. We vote.
I think it did, but I'll be honest, I haven't heard much recently. In fact, I actually looked up something on them on my inbox, so it has been a while. So, but again, I understand that all the organizations are busy, and even us, I'll be honest, we still don't have that infrastructure. We're still learning. We're not an insider type of campaign, and we're very protective of who we let in. And because of that, it's been taking a very long time to really go with a pro that we feel that we can both trust, that they're going to keep things clean, and that they're willing to really stick to what we're about. And so it's just been it's not as easy as it seems. And out there, it's like everybody, I don't know, it's like not everybody's clean, and they might have a few great candidates that they might support or work with, but then you also see who else they work with, and it's kind of it starts to make things complicated. So here we are, still trying to figure things out, but at the same time, we are feeling the love here locally, in our community, and doing on the ground work and mutual aid and other activities here locally that really is what matters. People get really hung up on Twitter likes and followings and this and that, and that really means nothing in my community.
That really doesn't mean nothing outside of the Twitterverse. It's a very small, actually the best pulse that you'll get in terms of local support is likely to come from either Facebook or Instagram, especially if you do local activity like we do here. We're huge supporters of small business. And so, Angelica, for the people who are fairly nihilistic about electoral politics and are lamenting the idea that, you would be a freshman representative, it would be very difficult to get any type of legislation through, that type of thing. Can you talk about the impact? Because this is one of the things I always like to highlight about AOC. Even though she doesn't get much done on Capitol Hill, the amount of change that she has brought to New York City in terms of the overall dynamic of the city, the fact that the city council has changed so dramatically, the fact that you had India Walton win the mayoral race out in Buffalo. Can you talk about the local impact that having you as a representative would have versus the representative that is there now?
Oh, I mean, as far as what our plans are, once we're in Congress and in a position of power, is to really utilize that platform to highlight and to raise up local candidates that deserve to be sitting in these positions of power as well. All the way from, city council, county, state, and everything in between, I hope to be able to, through our platforms, social media and, our office space, to be able to really be a resource for education and empowerment. I think that amongst progressives, we forget that, organizing doesn't come naturally to everybody. And even, how to create a sign-up sheet on, Excel or Google Sheets can be daunting to some people. So I think that we really need to start being a resource, more of a resource for local organizers, across the nation. And I think that's one of the things that I feel, AOC and the squad are lacking is, their willingness, or they're just, doing it of, creating a educational platform within their social media. I think that, and then also literally organizing and picking dates and actual actions. And, I think that if, for example, AOC were to say, on Labor Day, let's do this, type of action at your local congressional, your city, your, whatever, like if we pick something, and I think that if we could all stick to it, it would make an impact. And I think that being more active in the actual educating and agitating of the general public is something that I feel that we would do and utilize our platform for. I hope to be able to have a big enough office space. Like Tony has an office space, like in a storefront type weird, like it's like off, I don't know, it's like really weird. It's like in the middle of nowhere type thing.
That's not by accident.
No.
It's like the weirdest thing. So I hope to be able to have a big enough and accessible enough space to be able to actually share our space and to have like extra meeting rooms, to have local organizers to be able to organize. I want my office space to be a community empowerment center. I want people feeling welcome and really learning and us holding workshops in our space and really welcoming the public, and on top of obviously like holding community forums and things like that. But we really want to be an educational force, really, because I think that we really we're like an echo chamber, and after a while you start kind of hanging out with people who see things or like, understand things like similarly to how we do. And so I think that we overlook the fact that, people don't know how to organize. And that's what we gather from talking to people.
There is no question.
Yeah, good people who want to make a difference. They have no idea of even like, I mean, because I'm right there with them. Like, I was not raised to be a politician. Like, I mean, we kind of say hi to the neighbors. You know what I mean? This is not the life that I was raised up to be in. And I think that it's kind of daunting to some people. And to me, it was also quite a bit daunting. But because believe it or not, even though I was a political science major, they don't teach you the important things. Like, I look back at my education, I'm just like, what the heck were they really, wasting our, 3 years of, or whatever, 4 years of class time doing, but anyways, I think that we need to really take responsibility of our community and be a I would say like an active force. We need to be able to call out names, call out dates, and
there is an
real
amazing,
actions.
yeah, there's an amazing amount of influence that the federal seat grants you, and it is amazing how few of them actually take advantage of it. The only one who I've really seen taking advantage of it is Cori Bush, and that is something that is probably not that surprising because she is a community organizer by nature. So it doesn't surprise me that that is why she's been so active the way that she has, and I could definitely see that you've got that activist gene in you, like that's what you would be fighting for. What, as we wrap, what are the key issues facing your particular district that you will be fighting for that your current representative is not fighting for?
Absolutely. One of the most and biggest problems that we face here in our community, and this is it's not unique to our district, but here in Los Angeles, is the homelessness issue, our unhoused community. And it's getting worse and worse by the day. And with the moratoriums being wrapping up very soon, it's going to get even worse. We have people without jobs back in 96 when NAFTA was signed, or 94 actually, when NAFTA was signed, and in the 96, a couple of years later, one of the biggest factories here shut down, and over 2,000 union jobs were lost. We've never recovered ever since. Right. There's never, there is no company that ever took over to be a major employer here. So we're having an economic devastation that we've been seeing since the mid-90s on this way. Our representative takes millions of dollars from big pharma, big oil, pro-Israel orgs, and super PACs. He is a pro-war funded candidate. And it really goes to show that even someone who was born here in our community, grew up a working class family, who really had the makings of a leader that could really make some impact in their community. Once corporate funding gets involved, that's it. You're tainted. It's impossible.
We have made it very clear on our show a million times over that the unifying issue of our time is corporate special interest money. That is what matters. There's a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of the issues that define a particular area or issues that people are fighting for. But if you're under the corporate special interest influence, you are not going to represent your constituents. It's just not going to happen. And so having a representative like you who doesn't take the corporate special interest money, I think is what is going to define you. And if there are any, I assume you're Medicare for all, obviously, but if there are any specific users or any specific issues, I would say that you are focused on, just kind of knock them down. Like, this is our platform. This is what we're fighting for. And that's that.
Sure. Obviously, Medicare for all, healthcare is a human right. Public education is a human right, pre-K all the way through, PhD, higher education, and trade schools. Housing as a right, affordable housing, jobs and environmental justice, a Green New Deal, progressive foreign policy, protecting civil rights, criminal justice reform, humane immigration reform, a humane path to citizenship, and really creating fighting for veterans. Honestly, I think that there's absolutely, out of the whole homeless community that we have here in the city of Los Angeles, I think the saddest is when you see veterans who are out there, and after they've been put through so much and through so much trauma and really used up and spat out. I think that that's really the saddest. So fighting for veterans and their families, and so that's more or less what we're about here at Angelica Duenas for Congress's campaign in California's 29th Congressional District. We are 100% people powered. We take zero corporate funding, and we're ready to fight for the working class. People are dying, and we have no time to waste.
Guys, throw some love towards Angelica out there. We always say that It's really good to spread the love, be monthly donors, especially for these grassroots campaigns. It really helps a lot. So anything you can do, and even if you sign up to text or phone bank.
This is absolutely a winnable race. 43% in your first try. This is
$10,000.
This is not even a question whether this should be a priority in 2022. This is a priority in 2022.
When's your primary?
Yes. So just to clarify, that was our second run. I ran actually in 2018 as a green, 2020,
okay.
and then so here we are. It's our third run. And also to clarify, 10,000 in the primary, we spend about 65,000 in the general to get the 43%. But our primary coming up is going to be June 7th, 2022. And you can find out more about us at angelicaforcongress.com.
All right.
Check her out. Angelica, it's been a real pleasure. We certainly hope to have you back on. What we're going to do as we go forward, we're going to do, candidate panels and that type of thing, especially in Southern California. As you know, there's a number of non-corporate progressives that are running for office.
Yeah,
so
probably as it gets closer.
100%. Yeah, definitely. We will connect down the road. But guys, angelicaforcongress.com. Check her out. She's definitely the real deal and somebody we absolutely support. Thank you so much for coming on this evening.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, she was wonderful. Yes. And of course, like we said,
I don't know how she could have 5 children. She looks like she's like 20.
Well, she does look young. There's no question about it.
Great. Especially probably 5 children. God, honestly, people, if you want to have somebody in a position that can get shit done, put someone in there that's handled a household with 5 children.
No, I definitely think that this is, when you think of, and listen, I don't want to take anything away from anybody else that's running for office, but there is something to be said for understanding where the resources need to go. It's kind of like the primary issues, like the New York Health Act, for example. If you have a candidate that really has it together, has the numbers, and it's clear that this person who is representing the district is not representing it well, because if somebody could get 43% of the vote with no infrastructure whatsoever, it means that they want something else.
Well,
it's pretty clear.
And all she needed was some more name recognition and more people to just even know that they exist. But so she is running against another corporate whore. So, hey, Josh. Yeah, Angelica is great. She's really great. So people out there in California, check out California 29.
And so as we move along in the show, obviously we've got a number of topics to cover in terms of our news and amuse, but there are some very important stories. And one that I think was probably of any of the ones that I have seen, this is something that you caught, Jen, which I think is very interesting because as we know, the environmental catastrophe. I don't know what you want to call it at this point.
Impending looming disaster.
Impending doom.
Impending apocalyptic disaster.
But apparently somebody is finally deciding to get their butts in gear. And so there is a town, and this is from The Guardian.
Yes, I found this.
Interestingly
I like to
enough.
try to find, every once in a while, find some stories that are not completely bleak.
And of course, this is in California. California does lead the way in a lot of ways. And so in this case, there is a defunct gas station at so in Sonoma County. Ironically, Sonoma County, that was Bernie's strongest county in California in 2016.
This is the first town in America to ban new gas stations. So they're putting, no more new gas stations are going to come in there. I think that's it's good. It's a good thing.
Well, for anybody in this chat or anybody who's watching the podcast who is from Southern California or, is just from California in general, I'm sure you guys can definitely speak to the devastation of the wildfires, the droughts that are happening. There is a significant climate crisis throughout the country, but California is certainly taking it as hard as anybody. Yeah. And so the idea that you're just going to have to take this action is absolutely necessary. And reducing the carbon footprint, it goes without saying, is something that needs to be done.
How is this going to work? I mean, so it's a gas station that used to exist and they're not letting another one open there. They're keeping another one from coming in.
So I'm going to assume, and again, I can't really jump to it.
Wait, right there. No.
Which?
There.
Do you actually try to do that with your hand? That's funny.
Because on my surface it is. So I'm so used to touchscreen.
So in March, Petaluma and Sonoma County became the first city in the U.S. to ban future gas station construction or any new pumps on existing sites. In July, Sonoma County's Regional Climate Protection Authority voted to explore ways to support the 9 cities in the county considering bans of their own. A final vote on the resolution is scheduled for September. So it's coming up very soon.
That's a good direction to be going in.
I think it's a fantastic direction. California is certainly a state that isn't short on, renewable energy, but certainly having electric charge gas, got to get that word out, electric charging stations. And that's really what you need. One of the hardest parts about owning a hybrid here in Florida is because of the fact that our state is controlled by FP&L, because of the fact that it is an energy monopoly.
Right.
Robin Bennett wants to know, is your mic on? Because apparently they can't hear you. So you got to make sure you talk into it.
Yeah, I think nobody can hear me. That's kind of sad.
You're not speaking loud enough.
I need to speak loud. I shouldn't have to. Isn't the point of the microphone to not speak loud? That's what I think.
No, but you're not really projecting at all. So I don't know if anybody was actually hearing you.
I'm usually
so I think that's the question.
Loud I am. My mom's been telling me I'm loud my whole life.
No, you're fine. So, now we just need confirmation from the audience that they can actually hear you.
I'm just gonna,
So I think that this is a fantastic step, and it's certainly one that, again, it takes one domino, and then the next thing you know, it starts moving everywhere. That's really the goal here.
And lastly, in Florida.
Yes. And speaking of reducing our carbon footprint, there is nothing that could reduce our carbon footprint more than getting the hell out of the Middle East. And that in itself, when you think about...
We talked about this already.
We absolutely have. And so when you think about what ultimately happens when we reduce, and it's not, that's the thing that I would think that a lot of people would want to be talking about when it comes to reducing our military spending, is we're really reducing our carbon footprint, because that's what a lot of our military spending ultimately is. That's why Liz Cheney goes on national TV and complains about her stocks with Halliburton, because that's what she was complaining about. Let's be honest.
Like my interest is not going to be so good this year.
No, definitely not. And so knowing that President Biden was willing to do this, but the reason why we picked the article from Vox, and you could have picked any of the articles that they were talking about, is the fact that they're writing it in a way as if to suggest, was it really a good idea that he got out of Afghanistan? Was it really necessary to leave? And now Biden is finally taking some bad press because he's going against the military-industrial complex. And we all know how that works.
It doesn't.
So now he knows what it feels like to be Bernie for 5 minutes. Because sure enough, he'll come up with something to get back in their graces. You never know. But one of those, and again, this is really a very big discussion on climate right now, because it is such a monumental, it is the monumental issue of our time.
The U.S. military is like the biggest carbon footprint in the world.
So we have a really big problem with heat killing workers in the U.S. And of course, there are no federal or they say rules, but it's really laws to protect them. And so when you think about different places, so it's as we go forward, we're going to notice a lot of these problems when you don't actually have the ability to have worker negotiations. Even something as simple as, Nathan J. Robinson firing his employees with Current Affairs the other day because they wanted to form a worker co-op. People are not going to tolerate not being able to take control of their economic destiny.
No, it's not good.
And more people are going to say, to hell with this BS. We have to be able to protect ourselves. And so when you think about how devastating it must be to work out in 100-degree heat and you get heat stroke.
So apparently, at least 384 workers have died from environmental heat exposure in the last decade. That's a lot.
And it's not...
That's a lot for something that is completely unnecessary, that you can not have happen.
And it's not just dying, and there's other things related to it. Getting heat stroke is terrible. There's a dehydration problems that can affect your health in such a devastating way. And so it's a two-pronged problem. It's global warming, and it's the fact that you don't have workers' rights to deal with the fact that it's so damn hot outside, especially if you're working on farms. To me, it really speaks to, and again, we haven't connected with anybody who is part of the Nabisco worker strike up in Oregon, but we really would love to get somebody from that group on our show. We're obviously going to be talking very shortly with a gentleman who knows a thing or two about organizing in the streets.
This is really interesting. So it's saying that OSHA
Yes.
has failed to adopt any national heat standard or safeguard, to safeguard workers against rising temperatures. And for at least a dozen companies, this wasn't the first time that they've lost workers to heat. So this is something that they know happens. Here's a worker who died after hauling 20 tons of trash for nearly 10 hours. In many instances, some employees died after not having ample water and scheduled shade breaks. They died within their first week on the job. OSHA officials often decide not to penalize companies for worker deaths. When they do, they routinely negotiate with business owners and reduce violations and fines. In some cases, OSHA doesn't follow up after a worker's death from heat exposure to ensure that the company is complying with the measures the agency imposed to prevent future fatalities. So in other words, OSHA doesn't give a shit.
I'm going to share a very small story, but I do have a friend who works for a Fortune 500 company, and there was a massive accident that happened that ended up killing one of their employees. And when I say that this company did everything in their power to sweep it under the rug so they didn't have to pay anything or not take any PR hit, that's what they do. They do not care. And that's why having worker co-ops, being able to form a union.
Yeah.
That's why we talk about, you've got to hone in on these very specific stories that, or specific issues or fights that we can have, that we can win. So for example, we think New York is the eye of the hurricane in many ways, and not just because of the New York Health Act. But if Chris Smalls is effectively able to lead the Amazon workers to unionize,
it'll be a big deal.
Change the whole country.
It'll be a big deal.
So that's why we need to focus on this, because we're recognizing just how little power workers actually have.
Yes.
But it can change like that. It really is amazing, like how quickly it can change. And why does it need to change? Because your dollar doesn't go anywhere in this country.
It's a good segue. Like,
yeah,
it's a really good segue.
This really worked out well tonight.
I don't do it for that reason, but so as we all know, there is not a single place in this country where a person can afford to live on minimum wage.
Correct.
And now it's not even being able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. It's most people cannot afford just to exist.
Yep.
Like, so this came out. I don't know who did this study. It's kind of cool.
Well, it's actually very accurate in the sense that, I
almost want to share that. I mean, I guess they could see a small version.
Yeah, they can. And so
this map is really interesting.
Well, they've seen News and Amuse, so I think we could pull up the map. Let's do that. Let's do a switcheroo.
How do you do that? I mean, you're going to be all fancy, but you have to remove.
Okay, so we're going to remove this, and I think, you're probably like, okay, no. Now we go back to StreamYard and we share. So no,
you have to.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to go back.
All right.
The only way to do it.
A little bit of a funky approach, but that's it. Yeah. So as you guys can see, this is, it's still a little small, but it's giving you an idea of how unbelievably inexpensive it is to live in this country.
But the range goes from, and that's what's kind of, you need to see, the range goes from 30,000 to 40,000. Right? Like, that's basically the gist.
I'm not even sure if that's what they're alluding to. I think it starts back here and it raises and
that's
it goes all the way. So it goes up to like 50,000 or something.
DC and Hawaii are the worst.
Yeah. So the lowest what you would call cost of living is, I'm not sure if they're saying that it's Alabama, but it looks like
alphabetical order.
Yeah. So if we look,
but DC for sure and Hawaii are definitely the highest. Florida's up there. It's what you would pretty much expect, but so if the cost to live, let's say in Massachusetts is really high.
Of course.
The cost of living in Massachusetts, income required before taxes is $36,889. What percentage of the population in Massachusetts makes that?
Whereas
because then what we're saying is that whatever the other percentages are the amount of people that can't afford to exist.
Well, and it's not just that, but this is actually something that we did talk about in New York is 38,700, whereas North Dakota is 27,000. And here's the thing, guys, and this is what's important to remember when it comes to, why these things cost the way that they, or why the cost of living is what it is. We have centralized planning and decentralized planning. So any states with major cityscapes that are all focused on centralized planning, it's not obtainable. It's very difficult to live in those types of environments. It's not working.
It's not working.
So you got to change it. States like California, states like New York, even states like Florida, we would know. We're down here by Fort Lauderdale and Miami. It is unbelievably expensive to live, and you don't really get much for it. So I think when we talk about workers' rights and the things that we need to do, there is no question that being able to form a union and to be able to also be able to have a worker co-op is so very important. To me, it's well, of course, it's the poor people's fault. It's the poor people's fault.
You know,
of course it is.
Of course it is. But that's, of course, the epitome of punching down, you know, kicking down. And that's generally what people do. You know, you're going to blame freeloaders and the people like that. And
but what we are going to do is have a very productive discussion with somebody who knows a thing or two about how to get butts in the streets, and also recognize that direct action is how we're going to get this done. You need an inside and outside strategy. You can't have one without the other.
You need an outside strategy to push to have policy that becomes law. And you
that
can't
is true.
Have policies and laws and have, you know, you have to have those to have these things happen. So
as many of you know, we were supporters of the marches for Medicare for All. Unfortunately, a lot of drama unfolded that didn't allow for there was no organizing in the community down here, which we really wanted.
But we did a summit. So what we did was there was not one being planned here. We did a healthcare summit. We certainly promoted the national. I was always supportive of it, and it's neither here nor there. But no, we did not have.
And it's a big first step, because you got to start somewhere. You got to convince people that it's time to get your butts in the streets. And now it's all about what are the next steps. And so we are really pleased to bring into the studio the grand ambassador, or whatever we'd like to call.
This is the person who organized the march. And so this is a national thing. That's a really big step. And we need to see more of that. So we're going to pick his brain and get to, like, you know, strategizing and figuring stuff out, and hopefully encourage, participation in pushing for the New York Health Act.
Absolutely. So without further ado, Shareef Snuggs, welcome to Generational Change.
Hey guys, thank you guys for having me on. This is awesome.
Absolutely. So I think we should start at the top. Was this your brainchild to come up with this idea that we should have marches all over the United States and get as many people in the streets as we can for universal health care?
Yeah. I like sharing this story. A lot of people ask me, so like, what happened? So I'm new to activism and organizing. So what happened was that when the pandemic first hit, when Bernie Sanders said, now it wasn't time for Medicare for all, that struck a chord with me. I was like, oh, the cat's out of the bag. That's a signal that we should pay attention to. Like most people, I was just watching your show and watching somebody who left the shows before, so I never got involved, and that was like the first trigger for me to get involved. And then, like most people, I waited throughout the summer watching the George Floyd situation, like most people. And then when Force to Vote happened, I was like, okay, well, maybe when Bernie Sanders said now it wasn't time, maybe this is what he was talking about. Maybe this is the strategy, because we always hear about backroom deals all the time. I said, maybe this is the play. And then when that didn't happen, I joined different other groups, other organizations, and went to their Slack channels and went to their other meeting spaces, how they meet online, to get engaged, to say, okay, hey, what's going on? What's the next step? What are we going to do? We're in a pandemic. I didn't get any answers, nothing that I actually liked. So Ricky Dunlop was someone who was in part of the Force to Vote Slack group. Me and him had a really good relationship, and then we started reaching out to different other groups and different other people. And so we started with the two of us, then with three. So the five of us started the whole March for Medicare for All. That's Edie Ardell, and then there's Dan, and then there's Tony. So we started off with just one march, and then we started doing a bunch of outreach, letting everyone know that this is what we're going to be doing. And then the question was posed, well, how are you going to get those folks who live out in the West come to DC? Because we was going to do a DC march. I said, that's a great question. So we thought about it, and it says, you know what? Solidarity event. And so we said that we're going to have everyone else do their own march all in the same day. So it shows a unified front. The first organization and group that actually partnered with us, that's Whole Washington / the Red Berets. So those two groups, which I'm fully supportive of them. Oh, you got your Red Beret?
The ladies, when I was a candidate, they made me. This is from Fran. I always give Fran credit.
Oh, you know what? Oh, I should grab my beret too.
I don't know if you noticed our graphic, but I actually had to superimpose a red beret on you, because the picture that I found that was the best picture of you, like, I thought clarity wise. It cut your head off here. So there was,
Right.
it was like, you know what picture I'm talking about.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, I can't use that. So I actually superimposed a clip art red beret on your head. And he actually thought it was real. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
that's a pretty good job.
No, she's Shareef, she does an amazing job of graphics. I got to give it up. I mean,
did you
really
see it?
I did see it. Now I know who I'm going to come to for graphics now for the coalition.
Okay. And I told him, I'm like, I don't think he'll care if I stick a red beret on his head.
Yeah, so that was our first coalition partner. And Laura Felding is a big inspiration to me. Georgia Davenport as well. So they a lot of training went into this. Like I said, I'm new to activism, so I learned a lot from different organizers. I learned a lot from different organizations. I pick their brains. We have meetings, so many different meetings all the time. And then it went from 1 march to 3 marches to then 56 marches. And that just speaks to that doesn't speak to, my ability as an activist and organizer. It speaks to the need of healthcare in this country. People reach out to us and people want to be a part of this because they feel like they're not being properly represented. A lot of people just showing up to these marches is therapy for them, because a lot of folks, even in DC, I spent more time talking to folks about their healthcare story than, hearing the other speakers. I was doing so much work, running around, doing so many things, but also too, I was listening to the stories everyone had to share. So that's more evident to me that's why this was successful, is because people want someone to talk to and no one's listening to them. But big steps moving forward is our UN action. We are filing a complaint with the UN. I just had a meeting today with Martha Schmidt. She's a member of the National Lawyers Guild. She's also she's also part of the Human Rights Framework Project. Also to Dr. Vicky Casanova Willis. She's also part of the U.S. Human Rights Network. We are going to, our coalition is going to have a discussion panel next week with those two folks, as well as Shahid Buttar. And we're going to talk about why is going to the UN the next step, which is really important to us. So we had a meeting today about that. What are the information that we're going to need? What research we need to do? What is the best way to kind of route that complaint? Because there's so much work that goes into that. So it's a lot of homework that I have to do, a lot of reading that I have to do. But a lot of people ask, so why is that something that's important? It's about having receipts. It's about going on record. A lot of people, and you guys hear this all the time about what have you done and what are you doing? If you have a serious complaint with the UN about the United States government not having adequate care for its citizens, that's not only a tall order for us as a group, but also sends a big message globally that United States government is not providing the adequate care that it needs, because we police the world so much, but you can't even clean up your own home. And so that sends a message, and that kind of embarrassment needs to be had. We don't have any delusions that going to the UN is going to matter. United States government sanctions so many different countries, and then nothing happens to them, obviously. So doing this is another pressure campaign, like having a march, having a rally. This is all that is. We also too want to grow the coalition. We want more people to get involved. We want more people to get engaged. Long term, my goal is to have more small business, to have unions, to have other organizations, have some more crossover. We don't have many human rights groups working with us. And it's kind of weird because, we have a lot of groups that's pushing for Medicare for all, pushing for healthcare, but we don't have like a human rights group really intertwined with what we're doing. And it's obviously as relates, we're talking about human life here. So that's kind of like my future goal, is to keep having more of those groups working with us and having other businesses, because we all know that we do have people who have employer-based healthcare. And that doesn't work because I have employer-based healthcare and it's so expensive. So
how they keep you at the job.
Exactly how to keep you at the job. And so that's really the next step, moving away from just talking to orgs, talking to small business, talking to more unions, and talking to other healthcare groups that relate to what we're doing. So
and you're in New York City, right? At Jackson Heights?
Right.
Yeah.
One of the big things that we've been talking about for a while is that we believe that New York is the closest that we're going to come right now, that we see as an option to get healthcare through with the New York Health Act.
Mm-hmm.
they have the best odds. Like you've got the best odds of happening. So, you know, we would like to very much get behind that and promote that. That's something that, you know, is on our to-do list in January.
We'll come up and help.
Yeah.
Like,
but I think that New York is just, it's a really good opportunity. And we don't see anywhere else right now.
You've got the state Senate led
and
by.
We love the Red Beret ladies in Washington.
Yes.
We do, but it's just, it's much more ripe.
The power, the people with the levers of power are actually pushing for it. And so you've got the state Senate that's actually good. Gustavo Rivera was the gentleman we had on, and, you know, talk about where it stands right now, not just because there's momentum there, but the fact that Cuomo is out. I really think that this opens up a lane for us to just drive it through. And it's all about that next legislative session.
They have the support in their legislature. You have the support. Like, that's unbelievable. We'll never have that here. And Florida will be underwater before we would have that.
Yeah, we're going to need you. We're going to need states like yours, Washington and California to push it through, because
we're going to have to go somewhere else.
It's going to be,
we're going to be underwater.
And Shareef, the great thing about it is that there is precedent for this.
Right.
This is how it was passed in Canada. They passed it in Saskatchewan, in that province, and then it spread throughout the whole country. I think that's the only way it's going to happen in the States, because you can't pass anything on Capitol Hill, much less universal health care.
Is this something that you were looking at and working on as well?
No. So our group, we focus on mainly a national effort. That doesn't mean that we don't have solidarity for groups who are pushing like any state initiative. Like, obviously I live in New York. If it passes here, obviously I'm going to benefit from it. I'm going to use it. Obviously, the argument is, you know, for our team is to make sure that we're being a little bit more inclusive. So it doesn't mean that, like, again, just so you guys know, right now I'm in Tacoma, Washington, right now. Even though I live in New York, I flew out here to show support for the Red Berets and whole Washington, because they have an event coming up this weekend. I'll be speaking there at their event, and I'm there to help promote and work with them and continuously to push national healthcare for everybody. So that's kind of the lane that kind of like the March Medicare for All kind of sits in. We just want to go out and let everybody know who are they're pushing a state initiative or they're pushing a national initiative, that, you know, we want people to get out there. We want people to be forthright about pushing for healthcare. You know, any approach, I'm all for a multi-pronged approach. So I don't have any like loyalty towards like any strategy. If someone says that this is the best strategy tomorrow to get us healthcare, you know, I'm open to listen to it. I just don't want. I don't like the idea that, you know, this is better or that's better. I like the idea that we can all just have a discussion about where should we go next.
100%.
Right, but for the most part, like our coalition, you know, we look at like with the whole UN action. That's for, you know, obviously that's for, you know, everyone, you know. But I'm open to show support for any other group. So
one of the things that you had alluded to, which I think is a very important topic, is the fact that so many people who do have healthcare through their job is sort of, they're attached to that job. They don't feel that they have any real staying power.
They're serfs.
They're serfs.
They are serfs. 100%.
Yeah.
And I do think that what Chris Smalls has been doing to try to form that union in Staten Island, I think is, if that domino falls, that is one of the.
I think it'll be.
It would change the whole country as far as we're concerned. I mean, it would. I mean, to take down Amazon, because if you take down one, it spreads like wildfire as far as we're concerned. What are your thoughts on that, since it is close to home? And that would happen.
A little information there. Chris and I, we both talk to each other.
Nice.
So we both have each other's numbers. We both speak about activism and organizing, and we're gonna do some stuff coming in the fall. So we definitely talked about the crossover between how employees do not have access to healthcare. They do not have healthcare, and so my fight with healthcare and his having a union, there's going to be some synergy there. So this is what I was saying to you earlier about reaching out to more unions and getting those folks to join into the fight. That's a little bit what I'm talking about. There's going to be some crossover with with more people, more folks unionizing, and also more strikes. I mean, we see so many people organizing strikes across the country. So a lot of that is going to happen. You know, we're going to see more of that for sure.
Yeah.
That is a excellent
It's
point.
very promising.
It's
Yeah.
also one of the things that we've talked about when Jen ran for Congress down here. There's no question that the labor is really an essential part of this whole process.
It
And,
really is.
you know, especially being in a right to work state, it becomes so much more important to recognize. That's why, like, we've seen these stories, you know, it's terrible what just happened with Nathan J. Robinson's organization, Current Affairs. He fires his journalists because they tried to form a worker co-op. I just think more and more people are recognizing their power, that they actually do have influence, and that they're not gonna. We're just not taking it sitting down anymore. I really do think that there is that movement of strength that is happening.
The biggest thing why people don't fight for healthcare or don't fight for anything in this country is because they don't know that they actually have more power than they imagine. You just look at if you look at the fact that, you know, we're a grassroots organization pushing for healthcare in this country right now. The fact that most of us are getting out there is because we do not care anymore, you know, and we need to get more folks that believe that healthcare is a human right, and that we don't care that our employment isn't, our healthcare is entitled to employment. If I lose my job tomorrow, I'm fine with that. I'd rather fight for everyone in this country to have healthcare than worry about me making $12 an hour plus tips, because that's what I do for a living, because I'm a waiter. You know,
Right.
like I don't have any illusions that, you know, my efforts are going to make my life better if I don't push for everyone to have healthcare. And I think that we need, as a country, need to get to a point where that what's more important, you're having your healthcare or worrying about you keeping your job. And we need to inform our community. We need to be more community focused. That's another thing too. We need to start caring about each other in our community. We need to start doing some more outreach and finding out what's the best way to have a multi-pronged approach in our community, and not think about so much about strategy and coming from a human rights perspective. So, you know, I live in Jackson Heights, and we got hit the hardest with COVID. So many of those folks are undocumented, and they're scared to say something or, you know, reach out to people because they're afraid they're going to be deported, you know. So we got to reach out to those folks and bring them part of the coalition. It's going to be hard. A lot of them do not want to be public, obviously. So we have a lot of work to do. It's going to be a tall order to get more butts and to get more feet in the ground, to bring some more street heat, as they say. We need that. Yeah. It's going to be important. I mean, and our march is this is our first one. I'm hoping next year will be even bigger. Yeah. So, and that's what and again, so when I was talking about, again, having more unions and more small business, that's my big goal for next year's march, is to have more of those organizations, more businesses, more getting involved, getting engaged, because small business was hurt by the pandemic. Just to give you guys some background, I actually wanted to have small businesses at the DC March, because in DC right now, when I was there, before I even got there, I kind of knew this, but there's so many tent cities in DC right now. It's just so many homeless people there. When I was in my Uber, when I got off the train, getting to my hotel, whatever, it is just really bad to just look at. Like near the Capitol, there's so many different homeless people. There's so many tents, and even here in Washington State, when I got off the airport in Seattle, there's so many homeless tents. It's just like, I told my buddy, I was on the phone with him, I said, if I just took my camera and just recorded everyone here, they would say, you staged this. I don't believe that. There's so many parts of America that we don't understand. We don't see that the inequity is grossly offensive. And, you know, the number one reason why people are homeless is because of medical bankruptcy. And so we're not looking at that. We're not thinking about that. You know, we're causing our own demise, and we need to get out there and be honest about that America is a failed country.
Yeah.
It is a failed system, and we do need to have significant infrastructural change. And, you know, one of the keys, Shareef, which I think is very important, is messaging. I really think that messaging is a very big part of this process.
Absolutely.
What we always emphasize when we talk about universal health care is very simple. You are eliminating the for-profit middlemen in between you and your doctor. It is very simple. They have no reason to exist.
No.
You know, you hear from the conservatives all the time say, what does government do well? That's the argument that they like to give. My argument back to them is, what does Aetna do well? What does United Healthcare do well? What does Blue Cross Blue Shield do well? I'll tell you what they do. They suck you dry is what they do well.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Oh man. The thing with Americans, we believe in American subsidialism so much. It's the fact of the matter is we think that we're American and we're just better. That's what it comes down to. It's a cultural thing. It really comes down to it. It's a cultural thing. It's a privilege thing. I go through this problem with my aunt all the time. My aunt, she's one of those folks. She feels like if you can't afford your health care, go out there and get a job. You know, that's your fault. You did it.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Bootstraps, absolutely.
Like, so she doesn't recognize that there's people with no boots?
No, not at all.
You realize the pull yourself up with your bootstraps comment was basically always a farce. It was never meant to be real. The point is, how can you pull yourself up with your own bootstraps anyway? Like,
no, agreed. No, totally. But we have so many people like that in our own family. We battle that all the time. I'm very open about, you know, my upbringing and my family and how some of them are and how some people, you know, my aunt, she's like one of those people that she just never had major problems in her life. So she feels like I went to school, I got a good job. She comes from a different era. Obviously, she's a boomer, not to make fun of boomers. And she never had any major issues. So she feels like, well, America was good to me. So you must be doing something wrong.
Right.
So,
well, it's funny because Joe Biden I've seen him have that attitude. Like, it was a few years ago.
I have no empathy.
Right.
Come on,
like,
man.
Just, you know, when I was a kid, we would just work. And I feel like saying, yes, Joe, when you were a kid, you could live off minimum wage and support a family of 4.
Right.
And somebody could have a factory job or whatever kind of job and have a stay-at-home parent. And all of that was affordable. So yes, if nowadays, if people could just go out and get a job, if our minimum wage was a living wage, and people were given full-time work that was a living work, then I would agree with you.
Right.
Then I would say, sure, go get a job. But even people who have jobs still are not affording to live. That's the problem. That would be my main.
And I think it's becoming a lot more visible now. You know, it's interesting, Shareef, you brought up the 10 cities. You have no idea what we deal with down here in South Florida and the lengths that they go to sweep them off the streets. Like, they don't want to see you there.
They bulldoze them.
But when we were in DC last December, this was right before Wolf Blitzer had his one aha moment with Nancy Pelosi, if you remember. And we were in DC, and it was unbelievable how many tents, there was tents everywhere. And then the next thing you know, Wolf Blitzer goes on TV and tells Nancy Pelosi, what are you going to do about this homeless crisis? And she was like, how dare you talk to me like that? Right. And he's like, well, I see them all over the place, ma'am. It's a serious problem. I think for a lot of them, they just don't see it, or they don't want to see it. So they pretend like it doesn't exist.
Right. And it's funny too, like, not to make a big thing about this, but the whole thing with the rent moratorium with, you know, AOC and Cori Bush being in DC and camping out, they should have highlighted that, because those are the folks, the homeless people there. They're newly evicted homeless people. This is not like homeless people that have been there for like years,
right?
And you know, this is just part of the problem. No, a lot of these folks are being evicted left and right. And so, yes, that we do have an eviction moratorium. That doesn't mean that a lot of people are not being evicted. That's happening here in New York. That's happening in Washington State. That's happening in DC. I'm pretty sure it's happening in Florida. So this idea,
they're finding loopholes.
They are finding loopholes, and they are evicting people. And if I was AOC and I was Cori Bush, I would highlight that. I would have definitely highlight that. Would definitely make that point clear. I would even had some of them speak and let them speak their truth and be on camera and saying that. And I think, you know, that was in poor taste, in my opinion. I think they should have definitely made that point clear.
Yeah.
I think more people with the squad in particular want transparency, and that is something that we are not getting. And it's true. Right. And even in DC, and listen, there's no question it meant a lot to a lot of people that Cori showed up, and she was the one person who did. But when she was confronted even a little bit, it's almost like she's got her marching orders, so to speak. And it becomes very difficult for people who would say, you know, we worked hard to help you, to get you in there, to at least cause a ruckus, whatever that would amount to.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who ultimately become disillusioned with the idea of electing anybody, especially we saw what happened with Nina in Cleveland. And there is something to be said for building a very strong outside movement, because if the movement grows exponentially, the next time there's a Medicare for All march, it's in 100 cities and there's hundreds of people of every march, they will not be able to ignore it for long.
Right.
You know?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think that's what's going to take, actually. Jen and I, we definitely spoke about the idea of having an inside-outside game. I totally agree with that. But also at the same time, these people need to be pushed.
Like, yes.
They're not gonna do anything unless we pile enough pressure. Like, and people get mad at me when I say, like, there's no difference between having AOC or Joe Crowley, because they have their marching orders, like you just mentioned. So at the end of the day, if it doesn't make a difference, then you only have the question, why is that? You have the pride pressure. That's why.
And only in her case, the only thing that I recognize about her is just her existence and just being a non-corporate candidate to break through was so like changing. It was a big change. And so I think that in some ways she has changed the narrative. Now, her as a legislator is an entirely different thing.
1,000%.
So I look at her and I appreciate what her contribution was. And I also look at what her contributions are.
Like the way we look at it, Shareef, is because she was able to defeat Joe Crowley, you now have India Walton becoming the next mayor of Buffalo.
I think
I see it as a spiral.
I do.
No, agreed. But on the same token, I just feel that is nice. Right. She should be doing more. Absolutely. No, but also too, we shouldn't change the way we move based on a politician being in office, and too often that we go back to brunch, we go back to sleep because this person I like, or this person is not as bad as the other person. So let me just not work as hard. And that's the problem. She's there, so we don't want to work as hard. And that's my problem. Like when I first started out with going out there and protesting, I was protesting in front of AOC's office, and people was like looking at me like, do you know who you're protesting? As if like, how dare you? How dare you go knock on her door? And I'm like, don't mess with a woman of color. Leave her alone. Don't you bother her. AOC's working hard. She's working on our behalf. And I'm like, dude, like do you know in Jackson Heights where the hit is the hardest? I have to tell people that. And I'm handing out flyers like, we're hit the hardest. You know how many people are dying here? You know what I mean? They can't even get people in the morgue because we have bodies piling up. Like, she could speak to that.
And
so what's more important, me protesting AOC's office or the bodies are piling up? Let's get our priorities in order. Like, I don't understand what we're talking about.
Well, I think that the bigger issue, the bigger issue, which is that why would you not? First of all, and I've said it a million times, our congressional representatives are our employees, and they're extremely insubordinate. And so, to me, the fact that there's people that put them up on a pedestal, like somehow. Well, the truth is, look at us with all celebrity culture. I mean, we do it with so many people that are just so not any more worthy than anyone else. But it's the same thing with these politicians. They've become like characters at this point. And people put all their eggs in one, and then they get so upset when somebody doesn't do everything they want them to do. And then yet people fight against you speaking up to them. I'm like, first of all, it's not speaking up to them. Really, in theory, they're our employees. They're technically our subordinates.
And like, you as much as anybody, she's your congresswoman. So,
Yes, that's her job is for you to go and say what you want to say. That's her job, is to be. And I don't know if you were on when Angelica was talking about this, but her concept, the person we had on, is basically like what our concept is that the representative is supposed to be the ringleader of the organizing in the district for the people, not fighting against the organizers. And the idea that they're not doing that, it's bizarre to me. I said it when we were campaigning so many times. We ran our campaign as a service campaign. It was incredibly easy to do so. We give people service hours and we go do things. It's really
not only that, Shareef, you alluded to it, the importance of building those relationships with labor and small businesses. I mean, that is the key.
Why aren't our representatives doing that?
And when you not only that, when you think about the power of the federal seat and what you could accomplish as an elected congressperson, the fact that so few do anything to help their constituents.
They're afraid, and they feel like if they don't fall in line, they won't get this committee, they won't get this money for their district, they won't get whatever. To some extent, I understand that.
Right.
My thoughts on it are, one, be very transparent. If you're making a deal for a reason that's going to benefit your people, just tell them.
That's the, and
right.
the only person,
just tell
and ironically, the only person who ever admitted that was Cori Bush.
Right.
When they asked her, why did you vote for Pelosi to be speaker again? She's like, because I'm getting federal money to my district that desperately needs it. It's like, okay, fine. Well, at least
that's fine. I would be fine. I would be fine if AOC did that. And she said, hey, I'm going to do this so we get Medicare for all. Okay, great. Do that.
What I think
do that. That's fine. Like, but say that though. But I don't think that's happening though. I don't. I don't think so.
There's a variety of reasons. I think some of it is career driven. I think there's a
lot
of different motives, and they feel like they wouldn't be effective if they don't go along to get along. But my thought is this, and what I said when we were campaigning is, I would tell people, someone like me winning doesn't solve the problems. Someone like me as a legislator would probably be highly ineffectual because I'm not go along, get along. So I'm not going to be as effectual in terms of legislation and policy. What I can do is be loud, be an organizer, be the person that's rallying people up. So it's like, you got to sort of see what your contribution can be. And I think a lot of these people look at it like the only way they can contribute is if they go along and get along inside.
I wish more representatives took the idea of being on Capitol Hill is like a quarter of your responsibility as a congressional representative. The other 75% is to your constituents at home, being in the community, building the coalitions that are necessary so that people take an active approach. Let's remember, AOC won her election with like, I think it was like less than 20% of, the eligible voters who actually came out during the primary. You want 50, 60% of well, frankly, like to have everybody.
Our country's horrible.
If everybody was off their butts and getting involved, there's so much, like you said, that these representatives could be doing,
and they don't because they don't want to, because they
know, they don't want to.
And know that if that happens, they'll lose their jobs.
Right, and that's the thing. And the key point is, Jen, you made a point about saying celebrityism. That's 100% why AOC is untested. She's not challenged because we have a different respect for politicians than we do for celebrities. So celebrityism, it's like you can't touch a celebrity. Right. They're infathomable. But a politician, you can scrutinize them all you want. But celebrity is a totally different thing. I mean, she's on the cover of Vogue magazine, so now it's like she's it now. She's a brand, and so you can't touch a brand. It's different. That's the problem. That's the problem we face now in this country. Cult of personality is a huge problem.
Yes,
we need to stop celebrating politicians like they're actors.
And that's also the biggest.
Stop celebrating actors too, quite honestly.
I mean, good point. Good point. Good point. One step at a time.
Well, that's also, and I think that also speaks to, because obviously we're big supporters of Bernie, but Bernie's biggest flaw and the biggest mistake he made was that, much like Obama, he just completely left his activists by the side of the road. He didn't actually engage them and say, all right, here's what you do now going forward. This is what you should be doing, and it's going to make an impact.
This is why I don't like leaders. This is why a lot of people, I lose people when I say this. Leaders kill movements. And a lot of people don't understand that concept. Bernie Sanders was the Medicare for all movement.
Yes.
And once he dropped out, once he went quiet, it died. We didn't have any ground game whatsoever for Medicare for all. I was out there, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. Before, I used to think that, there must be tons of people out there ready to go, and it really wasn't. We kind of energized that side of people who wanting, the Medicare for all movement to be alive still, because once Bernie sat down, it was over. And so that's why I do not, this is why I don't have, a lot of people say this is my brainchild, so to speak. I don't like to take the leadership role, like look at myself as like the lead organizer or anything like that, because I don't want that to be. I want someone else to come along, have a better idea, better strategy, any better solutions, join us and figure out another strategy, another way to do it, because you can't put your ego on this. You can't have your own preconceived notions about like what's the best approach or what's the best outlook. You can't do that. People are dying, people are suffering, and you move the movement 10 years behind. We're already 10 years behind, so now it's going to even take us even further to get Medicare for all. And it's bad enough we have an uphill battle. The last thing we need is people putting, their experience or, their knowledge or, their approach over this movement, because we just need many hands involved, and we just can't do that.
And the truth is, individuals like yourself, individuals like Chris Smalls, and even an individual like Nina Turner, these are the real movement leaders. We have to stop, like you said, looking at the people at the very top to more or less, guide us. That's the inherent danger that comes with electing somebody like Trump, because he wanted to be that person.
People like having a leader, and people like having a villain, and that is just the way that this works. They like having teams, and they like rooting for whoever they're rooting for. I very much like what you were saying, Shareef, about that leaders kill movements. I think they do, because their egos end up killing the movements. But I do like the idea of there being like rotating leaders, because the thing is that it really is something, a lot of what is done, you kind of need somebody overseeing stuff. Like you kind of do at different times, but it could be different campaigns within one thing. Like it doesn't have to be one person every time.
Right.
So
people should have tasks. People should have tasks.
Yes.
Yeah. I have my UN task. You know what I mean? So I'm doing that. Someone else can come along and do something else. But I'm not speaking for the Medicare for All movement. I'm not speaking for like, this is like, everything is going to be on my shoulder and everyone should just listen to me. Like if you have an idea or you have an approach, you have something you're going to do out there that's going to help us get national approved Medicare for All, please go out there and do it. Don't look for me, or don't wait for me to give you an answer. Or like, if I decide to not do something tomorrow, everyone goes back to sleep. No, please go out there and be proactive. So I think people should have tasks. I think everyone should have their own role in this fight. I don't think that we should keep having, if Bernie Sanders drops out or Nina Turner drops out or, whatever happens, we go, we just rest on electoral politics, because I'm completely against that. I know I'm probably one of the few people you're going to probably interview that's probably against electoral solutions, but I think they have their place. But I just feel that at the end of the day, street heat is the most important, because you look at any movement, whether it's women's suffrage, civil rights, every major piece of legislation in this country happened because of street heat. 100%. 100%.
The thing is, the people on the inside have to be there to actually draft legislation and do stuff. So it's like, the pressure absolutely is only going to come from the outside. Power will concede nothing without demand.
100%.
But there still have to be people on the inside that will work with you and
we'll get them
on your side. You
have
to be.
We'll get them. We'll get them. Like if you look at any point in history, Richard Nixon didn't want to stop the Vietnam War. He was pressured to do that. He's not an ally. He was pressured to do that. FDR, a lot of people mention FDR all the time about the Green New Deal. The New Deal. He was pressured to do that. He wasn't an ally. You know what I'm saying?
Not out of the kindness of his heart.
He said, "Make me do it."
Right. So we can vote in whoever you want. We still got to make them do it.
Yeah.
So
no, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I agree, and I am completely on board with holding our elected people accountable. They work for us. It's not that complicated.
And not only that, the thing that we say on our show all the time, there really is one unifying issue that we should all agree on, and that is corporate special interest money is what is the signature issue of our time. It covers everything.
That's what keeps everything the way it is.
It covers economic issues. It's economic issues, racial issues, environmental issues. Everything is interconnected to anyone who is willing to be bought at the very top of a system that profits from the suffering of people beneath them. And that to me, more than anything else.
If our representatives weren't on the payroll of big pharma and big insurance companies, then we wouldn't be having this discussion.
And not only
wouldn't even be, of course we would have it, because most people want it.
Shareef, would you say that this movement, even though it's been scattered, obviously it's been difficult, and I think there's a lot of electoral exhaustion would be a good way that I would put it, especially after the last 5 years. But I think a lot of people in this movement are getting smarter. I think they're starting to recognize the tricks of the trade, how they do what they're going to do. They can sniff it out like almost like a basset hound, if you will, and just say, nope, I know what you're doing. I know how you're screwing us now, and we're not having it anymore. You got nowhere to go. And I think the more we recognize the game that's being played on us, the faster we're going to get, as you suggested, to where we want to go. But bringing the street heat, we agree 1,000%. I like it. It's really good.
How can people support your group,
especially with what you're doing for the UN? Because Shahid is a friend of the show. We would love to probably. You want to maybe do like a panel or something like that?
Look, I'll always platform this. I mean,
100%.
we had a very dear friend down here, an activist who was really our ringleader on the Medicare for All issue.
Mitch Stolberg.
And he died because we don't
have health care.
And the thing is, that was a really big loss to us down here in that community.
We're still recovering from it.
Yeah, I mean, well, in a big way. But one of the things was always healthcare is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. And that's on the signs, you see the shirts, but yet you're right. I had never really heard of the traditional human rights groups harping on the healthcare issue.
Right.
But yet I have heard groups doing similar things regarding other countries, but for some reason that we don't talk about it, and yet we know how bad our country is relative to every other.
This is what you're proposing is a fantastic idea.
Yes, it is.
It absolutely is. And you know what? And not only can you have the opportunity to present your case to the UN, that's when you really could rally thousands of people outside the UN with the signs saying, "Give us our freaking health care already."
And it's embarrassing. Well, you know what? It is embarrassing, but I have felt embarrassed traveling the last couple times I've gone internationally, just in general. But the fact that you go somewhere like I've been to Costa Rica, they can just go to the doctor there.
Oh yeah,
they can just go to the doctor there.
Wow.
You know, like it's like this, and yet we in this country with our exceptionalism, like you said, we look at countries like that like somehow we're superior, and yet we don't have what they have. So it's so like we have such a cognitive dissonance about ourselves. It's crazy.
Shareef, is it in what you would call still like the early stages, or do you guys currently have like a set plan or anything like that that you want to highlight or anything like that?
No, yeah, we do have a set plan. So we have a working group that we just started forming, and so the working group is literally going to be just jotting down pieces of evidence. Because you have to prevent evidence. You just can't go to the UN and just say, "Hey, we don't have healthcare." Because you need to talk about, have your country done anything to solve this issue? We actually have proof of that. That's very easy. The Biden administration refused to even recognize healthcare as a human right. So that's a piece of information right there that we can easily just plug into our information when we write this up and say, hey, our current administration is not even doing anything. They don't recognize it because we don't have any recognition. Coming long term too, I do want to see if we can actually get the Constitution amendment. That's kind of one of my ideas, is like even having healthcare human right on there as an amendment, just having that stated to let people know that this is serious. So it's not just a slogan. Now it's a piece of legislation. That's something we need to work on. That's the next step after the UN. But as of right now, we do have working groups. We are going to start reaching out to law students and different other groups to help us compile data and compile information.
I was going to offer, would you like if there's something I can do to help you, I'd be very happy to help you.
No, I love that. I would love that.
I'm an old, used, out of work law student, lawyer, and I just don't. Let's just say this. When you were talking about that you're waiting tables, I relate much more to that. I spent a lot of time waiting tables.
Well, you were able to do what when you worked at Hooters?
Okay, I did. I was a Hooters waitress. and this is really why, because I am younger than most people my year. So I wasn't able to serve liquor. I was only 19. And in Colorado, you were able to do beer and wine at 19. And anyone who waits tables know the only way to really make money is somewhere that serves alcohol. Like that's just where the money is. So that's why I worked at Hooters. But yeah, I could have poured a pitcher of beer and hula hoop around the table at the same time.
That's pretty damn impressive, if you ask me.
I don't think I could do it now, but at the time.
But no, but all joking aside, I love the idea that Jen, you helping out, because we are going to need it. We're going to need it. The first thing we're going to do, the first thing we have planned, the first thing we're working organizing, which is already set in motion, is working groups, and we're starting to pile data right now. We're starting to pile research. We're going to jot down all the pieces of information that we actually have. COVID is obviously one of the first things we talked about, because it's the most easiest. We're living in it right now, so we can easily plug that data. Yeah. The fact that I think there's a report that we was just looking at. 40 doctors has put out 40% of Americans would have lived because of COVID if we actually had a single payer system. So that's expert data right there that you can't even refute. I mean, unless you're going to say the doctors are wrong.
Right. The fact that we don't have it with COVID alone, the amount of deaths is crimes against humanity.
How many people didn't go to the hospital when they were getting sick because they don't have health care?
Oh, they couldn't afford it.
Right. Right. So we actually have a petition put out as well. I think I shared it with you all already. And we have like over 5,000 signatures already. We're trying to get that up.
Let him put it in. Where is
there a URL or anything that I could put in?
Yeah, it's the Action Network, the actionnetwork.org/petitions, Medicare for All movement issues demands to United States government. I can share.
Are you able to put that in the chat, Shareef? So
yeah.
that way I want to make sure that I get. We'll put it up.
Yeah.
Make sure we let everybody know.
Yeah,
about it.
because this is an important thing, and it's a really interesting strategy.
And
it's very smart.
And as silly as this to say this, but hey, you can always use another lawyer. That's just
no, for sure.
I don't want another lawyer. I don't.
If you and Shahid get an opportunity to work together, that would be pretty cool.
Out of my league.
Nah, he's
well, no. For this, there's no such thing as way out of the league because. We're not going to court. We're just
right. No, I know.
Right.
He's like very specifically a constitutional lawyer, so it's like that is his bag. Whereas, but I am research wonky. I am that. Like I am definitely a research.
Oh, and that's something we're definitely going to need. So for sure. So
all right. So loop me in. If you have our contact stuff, do you have our generationalchange@gmail.com?
Yeah.
However you got that communication. Link me in, or if you guys do a Slack or whatever. I mean, I'm not the best with all those apps. They fall through. I try. We
try to keep it simple.
No, my team.
Somebody has a Slack, and somebody has a WhatsApp, and somebody has and I can't. And if I have the notifications on, they drive me nuts. And so I really am just an email text person.
Guys, my team and I get mad at me all the time because I'm old school. I'm like cell phone heavy. I'm like email heavy. I'm Twitter heavy. So like I'm on there every now and then, but I'm not on our working groups as much as everyone would like me to be.
Okay, because I'm bad. I'm like, just please text me, people. Text me. Email.
Yeah.
But bring me into the loop. I'd be very happy to help you guys with that. That sounds like a really cool thing.
Guys, please click the link, sign the petition, share it, spread it everywhere. This is direct action, and this is how we're going to get things done.
Absolutely.
It really, really makes a difference. And the idea of having thousands of people standing in front of the UN saying the time is now for healthcare. Yeah. That sounds like a pretty damn good idea.
Look, and the optics are so bad for us.
It is.
And it's pathetic. It's pathetic that we have to do that.
And the truth of the matter is, if you do this plan, if you plan this well and you do it in front of the UN, you'll get people like BBC and Al Jazeera and groups like that to cover it, because we're not going to cover it, but they will, and that is going to be very, very big.
Yeah. We have some international allies out there, so they're going to be reached out to for sure. Yeah.
Anything you want to plug before we depart, Shareef? Anything else that you want to mention before we go?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at I am for Medicare for All. Please DM me if you have any other suggestions, comments, you want to know what the coalition is doing. You can also go to our website at mforall.org. We're open coalition. We're non-hierarchical. So please, if you have suggestions, ideas, you want to do any actions, we're open to that. I'm open to that.
And it's just as it sounds, I am for Medicare for all. That's Twitter.
Yeah, that's Twitter.
All right, I will put that in right now.
Keep up with this. It's really important, and there's going to obviously be more opportunities down the road for people to have local actions and participate in all of these things. And the next year when you do it, we're going to do everything we can to try to have something done.
And whenever whenever it is planned, whenever it's going to take place at the UN in New York City, we'll be there. So
it's I am the number 4 M.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Okay. I think you put it in the chat.
4.
There it is. Oh, okay. All right. So that makes it easier.
Yeah. I'd be a long Twitter handler.
No, well, of course we're trying to keep it as simple as we can, but there we go.
Guys, check it out. Follow Shareef, know what's going on, see if there's ways you can get involved. And I love this idea of the UN action.
This has been
we have to shame our own country to giving us
absolutely.
This has been a really great conversation, Shareef. We're really glad to have you on.
Thankful.
Let's keep the conversation going. And obviously now that the team is growing, of course, with Shahid and others, we'll definitely have you on again. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that whatever it's going to take to make sure that we leave no stone unturned and have a tremendous turnout for the UN event, we'll do all we can to help.
Healthcare's always been our top priority.
Absolutely. 100%.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. You guys do great work. Thank you so much.
Have a great evening, Shareef.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. I mean,
I think it's
that's
cool
the
that
man
he,
right
that
there.
he and Chris are like forming a little union there.
But
I think that's awesome.
but that's the outside movement that really knows what's going on. And just like we talk about how important Jordan Chariton and Jen
Yes.
Dice and all them are with Status Quo, this is that group. This is
These are
the
the people
real
doing the work.
on the ground work.
Yeah.
And this is how it's going to get done. I think the idea is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
great.
it is
I will get behind that.
100%.
Totally.
There's
And
how
he
could you
was
not?
Very obviously realistic. He's like, it's not that we think that that's going to get anything to
No.
necessarily happen, but I do think it's important to have a record that that's the case. I do think that we need to be accountable for our human rights violations, just like we think every other country should be accountable for human rights violations.
Well, this is going to be one of those circumstances. And again, it's just a genius idea to put it on the international stage.
It's embarrassing.
It
And
is.
most people in other parts of I know people in other countries that think we're ridiculous, like we're a joke.
And the thing
that
that
we don't have healthcare.
the thing that Shareef talked about, which I thought was very interesting, is he really hammered the idea, as we talk about a lot, about I think another one of the reasons why people don't advocate for healthcare as much is because there is this unfortunate psyche of American exceptionalism. Well, we don't really need healthcare.
No,
we're better than that.
And I think we've just been so conditioned with this private for-profit system that people just are so scared of the prospect of the unknown.
Well, that's the, you know what, again, and I'm not trying to claim I'm a genius here or anything, but again, it's kind of like with Carol Roth, who was on our podcast recently. And listen, she's got a lot of great ideas, but on the political right, they always have a very direct talking point. One of their biggest talking points is, what does the government do well? Well, we want government funded, not government run healthcare. But the question that's never been posed in the other direction is, what does Blue Cross Blue Shield do well? What does United Healthcare do well? What does Aetna do well? What does Cigna do well? Kill people and make money, bleed you dry. That's what they do. They don't do anything. They don't provide a service. They're a for-profit middleman who steals from us. That's all they are. And everyone needs to know that. So when a conservative tells you, what does the government do well? What does private insurance and big pharma do?
Right.
You even want to take big pharma out of the equation because of the fact that they can create life-saving drugs. But what does private insurance do well?
Yeah, but we pay for those drugs.
That's true, we do.
We pay for the research and then they screw us with the prices. But when you say finding out what they do well, I could have my husband come on here and give like a dissertation on all of the problems with managed care. He can tell you everything that they do wrong, and very well might add.
We just have to become a well-oiled machine. Like, to me, that's really the key going forward, is just like really taking it on. And like I said, there's another example. I am too.
What are we going to do for this? Our house is very slim pickings.
We'll figure something out.
Salad from Giordino's I used to like.
Salad.
I love that salad. But here's what they did. And look, I'll say everybody.
That's 3 things now. By the way,
if you were near a Giordino's salad, they're quite good. I really do like the place. Okay, I mean, this is just like a very, very nitpicky thing. But they have a salad called the Parisian, and it's an awesome salad. And the thing about the salad is that it has brie in it. And that's because it's the Parisian. They stopped serving it with brie, and now they serve it with mozzarella.
That's not the same.
No, it's wrong. For so many reasons, it's wrong. And it's just very sad to me. And I have to point that out.
See that sign, guys? That sign's basically going to be our sign from now on, pretty much. We're not changing that.
It just, you know what?
Just makes sense.
It makes sense. And plus, now that we're having like multiple guests, it's gotten where it's really difficult to like even contemplate names. And God forbid we have a guest with any name. Any names that are longer than 7 letters are really difficult for me.
Yeah.
So we need either guests with very short names, like we need like John Doe, like we need very short names. Lulu's gonna say goodbye.
Come say goodbye, Lou.
Lulu's
so before we go, we
Lulu's
just want to let's remind everybody that we actually are still a podcast that is trying to grow. And so for anybody who does sign up to become a Patreon, or a patron, I should say.
Our first batch. We're all just sent out the other day.
I love you too.
And then Linda Farnes, if you're watching, I have your shirt ready to go out as well.
Yes.
So and everybody who signs up now gets a Lulu sticker. You have a stack of them somewhere, right? Because I gave you some. All right, but you need to bring them back.
Okay.
So guys, get the Lulu sticker. She has a generational change collar on.
Look at how cute this little munchkin is.
Well, she is. And nobody gets the real Lou but me. This is my girl.
And of course I have to, she's very much more obedient when you're holding her.
This is my one true love.
Yeah, well, of course.
She really is. Like, and everybody in my family knows it. My husband knows it. My kids know it. It's not even like, we're pretty open.
You don't know how
with it.
difficult it is for me to be in Florida and not be able to see my ginger up in New Jersey. So I totally understand.
But you sort of adopted love.
Yes, I have. I have. Right, little munchkin? Like this little. Aw.
But
So as you could see, patreon.com/generational change, 5, 10, or even $25 a month.
Yeah, I mean,
depending on how you feel about our show.
Guys, what we're really about, and this is why we started this,
Right,
is to be a podcast. We're a podcast, and we do long form interviews, and we do things that are informational that talk about what our mission is, which is transforming politics into service. So yes, we do deal with electoral politics to some extent.
but we also deal with activism,
right? And we're not thrilled with it either.
No,
it's not like we're not. I wouldn't say we're not proponents of it. We just recognize that it's the lot that we're in right now.
Exactly. And of course, we're very involved in our local community. We did an amazing beach cleanup last week. Tomorrow we are going to the
those
mobile.
guys were great. We should have them on.
Absolutely. And tomorrow we're going to our good friends, the Mobile School Pantry. If anybody is in South Broward, it'll be at Hallandale.
Oh,
Hallandale tomorrow. Also have to stop by Hollywood. We are having tremendous success. Tremendous, incredible success with our back to school supplies drive with the League of Women Voters. So we have yet another big package of school supplies that we need to pick up from one of our drop spots here in the county.
I'm very excited about
So
that.
this has really made a really big impact.
And you do realize that on Wednesday is the panel discussion. So it's something that I did for the League of Women Voters. We have a panel discussion that we're doing, and it basically is culminating. It's an entire school drive for the month of August. We've been getting school supplies. And then our panel discussion is going to be basically about the school to prison pipeline and the importance of, and the link between the schools and education early on and what children end up in prison. And unfortunately, Florida has a very strong correlation of those.
Oh, we absolutely do. But we are doing our part to make that difference. And Jason, friend of the show and an awesome candidate for Congress, you're absolutely right. You do need an inside-outside strategy. You got to have both. You can't have one without the other because there's too many people that want one. There's too many people who want the other, but you got to have both together.
And you know what? Just sort of like for the love of all that is holy, don't be so hateful to people that are doing it another way than you.
Yeah.
It's like, and Shareef just said it really well. He didn't say lanes. He called it whatever he called it, but
your tasks.
Tasks.
Yeah.
And so like when I say something like stay in your lane, it isn't a matter of that my lane is just exclusive because I'm all that in a bag of chips. It's just that you're probably really good at something else.
Yeah.
It's not complicated, but just, let's
some people are better at organizing. Yeah.
Let's punch up people.
Seriously, because we don't have a lot of time, especially with South Florida. We really don't have time.
The people that need to be gone after are the people that have actual power
and are not using it to actually help people.
Right. That's who we have to go after. We don't need to be going after other people that are just doing
down, sideways. No.
It's not
up, up,
punch up.
Up.
Punch up.
That's
the
where you got
people
to
who
punch.
have power.
Guys, we have so apparently your mic is off or low volume.
I don't understand it at all.
So we'll
That's
have to
sad.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, or maybe I'm just
on.
projecting too much. I don't know. Maybe it's me.
It's on though. Like, so it's plugged in. It's
so
on,
apparently now somebody else is saying something's up with Jen's mic. So Crooksbane, we're not sure. We'll bring this.
Join, be Patreons, help us get better equipment. That's also part of it. Is like we're like a little nickel and dime routine. If you saw my office, it's like a Rube Goldberg.
Yeah, there's no question that the more we grow our channel, the better off we'll be able to have better mics.
We were able to get a good camera.
The quality of the image is obviously better.
Yes.
That definitely is making a difference for sure.
But guys, we could definitely use a new.
Your mic stinks, Jen.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it used to be my mic that stinks.
I know. Ironically, they're exactly the same mic, and we even got a new mixer or whatever that is. I am so
audio box,
whatever. Anyway, so I'll have Jason come in here and see if he could figure out what's going on.
We'll try as best
but apparently
we can.
You didn't test them well before you went into this.
It's my fault.
Well, I'm not saying it's your fault.
I should have went check.
Right.
But somebody would have ultimately told us.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Crooks. Thank you, Crooks. Appreciate it, buddy. There's no question that we absolutely should have been more prepared. But nevertheless, we've got a very, very interesting show coming up on Monday
Yes,
night.
guys, Monday night. So,
So-
I don't know, is it worth me talking into the microphone? Like, does it help at all, or is it just not even working? Should I yell over here?
I think that this may be our
Get all in
best-
your business?
I think it's the best bet we have at the moment.
Fortunately, he and I have been in the same COVID pod for like a year and a half now.
Yeah, kind of just
We're
put the working mic in the middle. Well, we're doing that, Ricardo. We're working on it.
all right. We're working
Try
on
not
it.
to knock anything
We
over. at
we
the
have
same
issues.
time.
So
But
what were we
Monday
saying?
night- so-
Okay, so tell him Monday night.
Monday night is going to be huge, incredibly huge. Monday night, we are having on Nick Brana and Zaina Day of the Movement for a People's Party, the two directors of the Movement for a People's Party.
And we have some serious questions.
We are going to basically have a Democratic Party versus People's Party discussion. What is the best strategy? Can both work? Along with what we do outside of politics. But this is a very contentious issue right now.
Yes, and it's causing a divide.
It is. So we need to have this discussion. It's very important.
And I have some concerns with the People's Party. So we are going to address concerns. I support any and all things that help move progress, but I have some questions to raise with them. And Zaina was very clear that we can ask whatever we want. And, you know, Zaina's a friend and was very good to us. And so, you know, this is
Zaina
not
was part
something
of
brand new Congress.
Yeah.
And so this is not any sort of like attack. It really is legitimate because I think that all groups that are garnering backing and power need to coalesce. And that's where
Yes.
it'll work, because if everybody stays in their own little niche, you're not going to get enough people, enough backing. So we need to have a broader range of people. So and it's going to be a good discussion.
Blue, it is not going to get ugly. That
No,
is not
no,
what
no.
What
I'm
happened?
supportive of them. There's no
yeah.
getting ugly. I don't
Trust me. What happened the other day is never going to happen again on this
No.
show. So it is without question. It's going to be a substantive discussion. There will be a back and forth.
Yes.
We're not going to attack them.
No,
They're not
no.
going to attack
I
us.
have some
We're just
legitimate questions.
We're going to have questions because, again, there is a huge divide on this particular issue. There is no question. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. I think so
Yep.
too. Like, I do have concerns with the People's Party. I have concerns that we're having technical problems.
Just
All right.
project.
I'll project. We have concerns, like I do, that, and I think the same thing about Greens, quite honestly,
Yeah.
is that it's too niche. And when it's too niche and isn't going to appeal to a broad enough spectrum of people, that it's going to always stay small and fringe. And that's my concern. I think in order for it to be really viable, it needs to have a broader base.
Not only that, and we talk about this with the Green Party
Yeah.
in particular. This has only happened because the Green Party decided that their Puritanism was more important than putting Jesse the Body Ventura as their
I love
candidate.
that you still call him Jesse the Body.
Well, I am the body.
You always, I don't know, I feel like you have a tinge of Arnold when you do that.
I can't help. It's the Predator.
Very
That's what it
punchy.
is. But again, it is an important conversation to have because you ultimately have to be able to move the needle. And so in this case, the conversation I think will be very, very important. Lots happening. We're so happy all of you guys tuned in tonight. This was a really great show.
Yeah.
Really
And
great
we
show.
will talk about those issues about third party because you know what? I think it needs to be had. I think it's a good discussion.
Yeah, there's no question because if you are going to be effective at it, let's remember, I still think that the biggest thing that the Movement for a People's Party could have done to help their credibility was to put all their muscle behind making sure that Nina Turner won her race, considering the fact that Nina was the keynote speaker for the Movement for a People's Party Summit.
Right.
And
she
they
showed up for them.
And just retweeting her and acknowledging her
Right.
is not how you pay it forward.
Right. I think they
No.
could have done more. And again, we're not
100%.
going to go into a post-mortem on Nina's campaign. We're not.
So with
Yeah.
that said, we really appreciate you all coming on tonight.
Yeah, he sounds
we-
like the Predator. You're right. It's Predator.
Yes, I sound well. Of
Well,
course,
you
I
mean
ain't
from-
got time to bleed.
Yeah, it was great.
So, with that said, we appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you Monday.